Macca's Guides.
Hey guys, Macca here, playing Cuphead. Welcome to part 3 of our full game bosses guide. This will be covering World 3, and I'll link to the first 2 videos down below. I will be going into detail on every boss about how I managed to beat them, what I would recommend, and how you can grab that A rank. So let's get started. First off, we have a very challenging boss known as Rumor Honeybottoms in the Beehive, and for this I'd recommend the normal pea shooter as well as the lobber, which will be very, very effective at the end of this run. Now, in order to get that A rank, you're going to want at least 2 parries, so you can do that during this first phase when the bombs explode, or you can try to do it a little bit later, but it might be difficult. Now, although I am using coffee, which will help me get my X moves built up a little bit faster, some people might have more success on this boss battle with the automatic parry in order to get parries more easily on this middle phase. Once you start the second phase, a couple of things can happen. First off, the bee can drop from the left or the right, and then do one of 2 things, which are going to be throwing these balls at you that you can parry, or throwing these triangles at you that spin around and then shoot a parryable item from each corner. The balls can be avoided really easily, so I would just recommend using the platforms and making a way around. Whereas for the triangles, you probably want them to spawn, and then you want to keep your distance from them, allowing you to parry some of the parryable objects that come off of it. You may also get a phase where the bumblebee drops from the middle and shoots these missiles that travel in an S pattern up the screen. What you want to do is position yourself on the very far left or very far right, duck whenever possible, and use the lobber to get consistent damage. Last but not least, you'll enter the final phase where the bumblebee comes down reading a book and she'll transform into a plane. Do a lot of damage onto her as soon as she comes down so that you have to do less damage as part of the plane phase. Stand on either the top left or top right and use your lobbers in order to do consistent damage, making sure to either A, dodge the flying punching gloves, or B, dodge the saws that will either come from the left or the right depending on the animation. Although this is one of the tougher bosses in the game, once you get down the pattern and use that lobber, it's really not too bad. Next up, we have Captain Brineybeard. I use the pea shooter as well as the homing bullets, but I'd probably recommend the spread shot instead. I'm also using coffee, so keep that in mind. You'll spend a large amount of this boss battle standing directly in front of him with your pea shooter and aiming up. Throughout the entire boss battle, you do have to worry about the barrel that will be directly above you, and as it passes over you, it will drop straight down. So you're gonna have to make sure you're timing your movement back and forth around this barrel. Also, he'll pull out this pink squid or octopus and shoot you with pellets. A large majority of those pellets will be parryable, and that's where you're going to want to get your parries. Now, occasionally he'll also whistle his fingers, and one of 3 things will happen. The first is that a shark comes across the background and then lunges from the left to the right of the screen, where you can just stand on the right of the platform to avoid this completely. Another one is that a squid appears in the middle background, shooting down ink pellets. As those ink pellets hit you, they will blacken your screen, making it harder for you to see, although they don't harm you. And the third thing that can happen is a submarine appears on the right hand side of the screen right next to the ship. And that submarine will summon these like seal dogs that will try to attack you low. You can either shoot them or jump over them. Now, as you damage the boss and he reaches his second phase, the ship will also begin spitting cannonballs at you, which fly low, and you have quite a low amount of time to react to them, so keep those in mind as well. During the last phase, the mouth of the boss will open and you'll have to shoot it in its uvula. It'll also spit out these rotating circular fireballs, and you'll either want to run under them when they're high or jump over them when they're low. Whichever one it is, you want to commit and make sure you don't get squeezed on the left side of the screen. Also, make sure you're using your X moves when possible. After the 3 fireballs and doing a little bit of damage to the boss, he'll close his mouth and then spit out a giant pink beam. Now, it's definitely easiest to crouch under this beam, although it is possible to also jump on this beam and then parry it multiple times, which I wouldn't recommend unless you're really crazy. With a little bit of practice, in my opinion, Captain Brineybeard is one of the easier bosses in the game. Next up, we have Dr. Kahl's robot in the junkyard, and the robot starts off with 3 distinct parts, including an antenna at the top that shoots a giant laser on a timer. There's also an opening on the bottom that releases ships on a timer as well, and there is a middle part that releases a parryable object, which will launch lasers going up and down from it. Now, what you need to do is damage all 3 of these parts individually until all 3 of them are broken. However, when they break, new things will happen. When you break the antenna on the top, he'll start shooting these nuts and bolts from his mouth. When you break the bottom, he'll start launching these new homing missiles that explode into a large skull face and potentially kill you. You want to try to destroy all 3 parts as close to each other as possible, and then a heart will appear from his chest, which you can damage in order to get to the next phase, which is this. Now for this phase, you want to stay near the middle of the screen and rotate counterclockwise, attacking the head of the robot when he returns towards you. Make sure you're timing it so that the missiles appearing from the left side of the screen have already traveled a little bit towards you before you start pushing back. This part can be quite difficult, but you should be also using your X moves to damage the head whenever possible. Eventually you'll reach the last stage, and this is a little bit of a bullet hell, and there are some strategies, although if you just kind of sit back and keep shooting, you will eventually win. What you want to do is try to stay near the middle, but all the way to the far left of the screen. If you're on the far left of the screen, the bullets will spread out by the time they reach you, so you should have a lot easier time maneuvering around them. Also, being in the middle of the screen will allow most of your bullets to land on the doctor even if you're not aiming at him, since you're probably paying attention to the dodging and not necessarily where your bullets are landing in the first place. All it comes down to is surviving when possible. Feel free to shrink your ship if you need to get a little bit more speed or a little bit more agility around corners, and then watch out for these electrical beams that come up and potentially kill you. I would always try to recommend sticking to the left and trying to return to the middle of the screen in terms of the vertical axis. Next up, we have Werner Werman, which I think is one of the easier bosses in my opinion. For this, I am using the pea shooter and the tri-shot. So near the beginning, he'll do one of 2 things. The first one is what you see on screen, is launching a brigade of these fire bombs. As the fire bombs explode, they release 2 little fire pellets on the ground going left and right. You're going to have to make sure to jump over them. And then he'll also sometimes release these platforms that you'll have to parry in order to jump over him when he crosses across the screen. Now he has another phase, which is a catapult, and he'll catapult a bunch of junk towards you. 2 of the 3 middle parts of the junk will always be a parryable piece of gum, so you want to make sure you get your parries there. During the second phase, make sure you use the tri-shot and learn a little bit of the pattern. As he is high, make sure you're low, and as he's low, make sure you're high and unloading. Also, you'll notice the rotating bottle caps or can tops, and those will come in and out of the screen. Make sure you plan accordingly for those as well. Eventually, after you do enough damage, he will turn into a cat, where I would probably recommend trying to use your super moves to damage him. Now, the cat will start off by trying to claw at you with either a left or right move, and you can tell which way he's going by which way his paw travels to the side of the screen. As that's happening, little planks of wood in the shape of cheese will fall from the ceiling. Then eventually some ghosts will spawn, and they will throw parryable objects. They start as big balls, and once they hit the ground, they become 2 smaller balls that are also parryable, although they move quite quickly, so it can be quite difficult to get accustomed to these. Just keep damaging the boss until he eventually goes down, using either your tri-shot or your pea shooter and a combination of your X move. Once you learn how to become efficient in this level with the spread bullets as well as your X moves, it becomes quite easy. Next up, we have the plane mission against Cala Maria, named after the delicious snack. Now, this one isn't too hard in my opinion. There's just a lot of things always happening, and they're always coming from different places. Sometimes she'll spit out 3 ghosts, and they converge onto your position. Just make sure you shrink and go out of the way. Also, these puffer fish will come out of the ground, and some of them will be parryable, so make sure you can grab as many as possible. I ended up only getting 2 out of 3 parries because I did this too fast and missed one of them. Sometimes she'll also pick up a fish out of the sea, and depending on the color of the fish, you can tell what's gonna happen. If the fish is yellow, she'll launch an electric dolphin at you that will try to home in on you and hurt you. If it's a red fish, she'll launch a spread shot at you. Also, at the bottom of the screen, you can have a turtle, which will launch little mines up, and those mines will explode into 8 directional bullets. Or you can have the horse, which will try to push you to the top of the screen using a jet stream. Eventually, you will do enough damage to get her into her second phase, where a bunch of electric eels come out of the ground and shock her. Now, you can shoot those electric eels in order to damage them and take them out, or you can just leave them and damage her instead. Those eels are going to be shooting bullets at you, and you can dodge those bullets if you want. However, she will also launch this vision thing at you that will turn you into stone, and you can't avoid that. If there are too many electric eels on your screen and you turn to stone, you might end up with no option other than to get hit by one of those bullets. During the last phase, I would recommend you stay near the left of the screen and then time that with her stone vision. Right after you get turned to stone, I would recommend shaking out of it and making as much progress towards her as possible, waiting for her next strike. You're trying to dodge the green skulls and the bubbles here, as well as some of the environmental things that will get in your way. Make sure you're using your X moves as often as possible, and you should be able to defeat her after a couple of tries. Next up, we have Sally Stageplay. I would highly recommend using the spread shot and coffee against her to make quick work of her. Now, what you're going to want to do during the first phase is get right up next to her and use your spread shot. Whenever she jumps, you'll want to try to dash underneath her, and then sometimes she'll just try to jump again and do something else, or sometimes she'll throw a fan at you. If she throws a fan at you, it'll get stuck into the ground, and you'll want to watch out for it for a little bit. Also, sometimes she'll blow these kisses at you, which will spawn a parryable heart, which you'll want to obviously parry. Damage her until you get to her second phase, and watch out for when she turns into a bubble and tries to come down at you. During the second phase, you want to damage her as fast as possible. She'll kind of repeat what she's already been doing, and there will also be a baby in the windows in the background throwing bottles of milk at you, which you'll want to avoid because they will damage you. Also, there's these little toy cars that are falling from the sky. The ones that fall from the sky will automatically break upon impact on the ground. However, she can also spawn them from her umbrella, and if they come from her umbrella, they will drive outwards from where she is. Just keep damaging her and use your X move to get to the next phase. When the next phase starts, stand right in front of her and then use your tri-shot to damage her quickly. And you'll have one of two things happen. Either the meteor or the lightning. Regardless of which happens, a rock will drop. You'll want to open it to reveal the parryable star. But don't parry the star until the wave shows up. You'll need the star to parry over the wave so you don't get damaged. Although if there's lightning, just make sure you dodge that to the best of your ability. During the last phase, the boss will always be at the top, and there will always be a spinning umbrella that is always spinning towards your direction regardless of where you're going. Additionally, roses will be falling from the sky and then laying on the ground and going upwards. Some of these are parryable, so parry when possible, but some of them will harm you. When they do fall, they lay on the ground for about a second or two, so make sure that you're not stepping on them when they're laying there. Just use your pea shooter or your tri-shot and X moves in order to damage her until she's done, and this boss battle isn't really that bad. Last but not least, we have the Phantom Express in World 3. I would recommend the pea shooter, the spread shot, and the automatic parry. This is the only boss battle in the game where it's actually useful. You'll notice you're standing on a small train car with two parryable objects that will move your train car from left and right of the screen. Additionally, there's jack-o'-lanterns with parryable bricks floating above. They will drop those bricks and they will try to move your trolley for you, or you can try to parry them before they hit your trolley. The first phase is super easy. Just stand there with your pea shooter and continue to shoot him until he gets damaged. For the second phase, what you want to do is use your tri-shot and aim up, or use your pea shooter X move whenever possible. Then you'll want to move your cart and try to stick near the middle in between each time that the skull man goes into the train car. You'll also have to watch out for the jack-o'-lanterns that are trying to move your cart, and if you get moved into the wrong spot, just try to not take damage by the hands and you can stay in between them and stay safe even if you're not doing any damage. For this phase, I would recommend trying to start near the beginning and equally damaging both of the heads. One of the heads will eventually begin to vomit and then come across the screen. Now, obviously, you want to go away from this person and then into the corner of the screen, aiming up and damaging whichever parts you can. As this is happening, the smokestacks from the middle will be releasing these ghosts, and as those ghosts are destroyed, they will turn into parryable pink skulls. Make sure you're not shooting these skulls at the wrong time so they don't move your cart, and make sure to parry them when possible to fill your super. This phase can be quite difficult, but as long as you're always returning to the middle of the screen after a lightning vomit part, you should be pretty safe. Then we have our final phase, which is actually pretty tough, and there are not that many ways to speed it up. What it comes down to is your ability to survive as long as possible. Stay near the middle of the screen, I would recommend, and then parry the train's little tail thing whenever possible. Whenever you do that, it'll open up his core. At this point, you should be shooting up with your spread shot or pea shooter, but don't look at where you're shooting. Instead, look directly at your character at all times and focus on moving out of the way of the small fireballs. Additionally, very important, there's these small O-rings of smoke that will come down, and as they reach your height, they will come across the screen, and those will probably damage you more often than anything. Keep your eyes peeled for those and make sure you're dodging when appropriate. Just keep damaging the core when possible and you will eventually beat the train. Thank you guys so much for watching my guide on all of the bosses with an A rank in World 3. I will have 2 more videos for this series, including the Dice Gauntlet at the casino and the final boss battle against the Devil. Thank you for watching. Share the video with a friend. Drop a like if it was helpful. Subscribe for future content. And special thanks to all the amazing people on Patreon for supporting the show. Peace.